Welcome back to the Mintner Method. I'm your host, Andrew Mintner, and on today's episode, we are going to dive into the Week 4 matchup between Rice and Army. So, to continue with the trend for this week, we're going to be looking at teams who are elite in early down situations. So, that's going to mean first and second down, and showing their efficiency, their EPA. So basically, the angle behind that, as I stated in the previous video slash episode, is the more successful teams are on first and second down, the less third downs they have to go into. Therefore they're not as dependent on succeeding in high leverage situations. And so that is just kind of like a common sense narrative, essentially. It makes sense. It's not like a cherry pick stat where one team's really good in the afternoon against East Coast teams on the third Saturday of October, or some bullshit like that. It's just it's something that makes sense, right? And so far this year, in a very small sample size, as I must state that, non-power 4 teams, versus other non-power 4 teams are 14-6 when they rank either in the top 15 in offensive early downs EPA or defensive early downs EPA. So now when we're looking at Rice and Army here, there's a couple of things that really stand out. So I've done a series before for betting pros which focused on high rush rate teams. Simply, a different angle that, looked into teams that really dominate by running the ball, and it's a very one-sided, simple handicap. Now, there's a lot of flaws to that, but I think by doing that, I've been able to kind of gain an understanding for these high-rate rush teams to a different level than like a normal analyst or person would. So, as most people know, pretty much the academy teams are going to be the highest rush rate teams in college football, and Army is no different. So let's look at Rice here. They're pretty abysmal offensively, 124th in EPA in early pass situations, and they pass the ball a lot on first and second downs, 56% of the time. And then just overall 127th. That's almost bottom 5. It's bottom 10 in the entire country. Army, their defense, that's not really the cap anytime you're looking at these academy teams for the most part. But they have been decent. They've been serviceable. Now, they have only played one game against an FBS team, and that is FAU. So these statistics for the early down EPA success is only against FBS teams. So if you played, East Jesus Baptist College or something and beat them by 100, that does not rank into these. You have to play Division I teams, FBS teams, right? So Army, to no shock, dead last in passing on first and second down. They're 6.1% of the time do they pass the ball on first and second down. So, the cap becomes even easier when you look at it like that. Now, on the 6% of the times they did pass it, they were actually really good. So that's not really going to be part of the cap, though. So you can kind of just ignore that and throw that out the window. So this is what we're looking at. They're 7th in EPA per rush attempt on early downs. Rice is 80th. Now, I know you're saying, okay, well, that's not like bottom 20 or bottom 30, but when you're playing these service academy teams, being average is almost being bad, when we're talking about the run. Now, if this was like an LSU or something like that, we learned this lesson last year, then it really wouldn't matter because the athletes are just incredibly better. They're physical, but this is Rice, being average against the run, not good. And the thing that's even more eye-opening for Rice is, Sam Houston State just beat the brakes off of them. And Houston, I know, Houston is a Power 4 team, but they could easily be the worst Power 4 team. They looked absolutely horrendous to start the season. But Willie Fritz got them rolling, and they just dominated, So next, we're going to look at the advanced statistics, and it's really to look at the rushing side of the ball with Army, just so we can kind of see in general what we're working with here. Rice, offensively, not a ton to write home about. Very explosive running the ball, which, that could be something that maybe stands out. But again, Army's actually decent at, limiting the run in the small sample size that they have. Now, they do need to be better when it comes to passing. They're playing more like a shell defense, it seems like. Just probably strictly zone, probably cover 3. If I had to guess, I haven't looked it up really, not because I can't or don't want to. It's just not really factored into the capping for these types of teams. So when we look at, Army's side of the ball, this is the type of stuff that we're looking for, okay? Second in stuff rate, they've only been tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage 4.8% of their rushes. Rice, not good at stuffing the ball carriers. Offensive line yards, second overall. That's incredible. That's basically grading the offensive line and how well they do in their blocks and creating space. Front 7 havoc allowed, 9th. That is a part where Rice has done decent. They're 17th here, 16.4%, and 36th in overall havoc. So that could be an area where they make it happen. But this is the meat and potatoes here. 6th in offensive rushing predicted points per attempt, 47th in explosiveness, which is actually pretty rare for the academy teams. They usually don't have explosive runners. That's pretty good. Like, that's much higher than normal. And then, we look here. We've got 60th in rush predicted points per attempt and 104th in rushing explosiveness. So that's just not going to be good enough. And especially when we're coming into our second road game in as many weeks for Rice, having to go, and play Army at home. Army is getting a week of rest to prepare. That just checks pretty much all the boxes. Now, when we're looking at the returning production, as we will just for probably maybe 2 more weeks, Rice had a very bad defense last year, 113th, but they're 42nd in returning production, so they're trying to build off that. I don't know if it hasn't shown in the early goings. Now, Army, on the other hand, not great last year, returning production-wise, but they seem to have gotten a little bit better, at least in the one showing they had. And this is really a handicap that's, geared towards Rice not showing up in 2 games that, they weren't playing like world beaters. Sam Houston State and Houston they're not. I'd be shocked if either one of them won 6 games. And so when we come over here, the line has ballooned from 5.5 up to 6.5, which is always going to be tough taking a Service Academy team when you feel like they got to win by a touchdown or more. But the reality of the situation is if Army gets up 2 scores, the possessions will be limited. And, when a Service Academy team usually gets up more than 2 scores, the game's over from a spread standpoint, especially if you need one score, and that score being a touchdown. Because they just dominate the time of possession, they dominate the clock. It's really, this is all pretty standard. Like anybody who's watched, Service Academy games, they know like when the game's basically over. It can be over in the second quarter, in reality. But yeah, so that's going to be the take for this matchup. I think Army's just going to have too much for them running the ball. I think we're going to lean into this early down success rate. Rice, I just don't think they're going to be good enough. And it's going to be death of 1,000 paper cuts like it always is. And I just think eventually, they're going to bust through. And this could be a 14 to 20 point win by Army. It could be no sweat, and they could just pretty much dominate the point of attack the whole game. All right, well, that's going to be it for this video, this episode. As always, if you like the content, please like, subscribe, comment. does great for the algorithm. Obviously, this is a new channel just starting out. And if you have any, suggestions of games you want to be covered, you can leave them in the comment section. You can message me on Twitter. You can email me at themintnermethod@gmail.com. If it's not on my list of games that I have to preview, I will do my best to get around to it. And if my schedule abides by it, it's late in the week already. So I'll get to as much as I can. I'm trying to cover all the games that people want covered, like your big matchups and stuff of that nature. But I'm also covering these obscure games that there's value in that go overlooked because, again, people are not targeting them. So, but that's going to be it. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.